Hi, it's Kathy, and if you've been following our journey, you know we've been in Perth now for around 6 months. We made the move in April 2022, and today's video is going to cover a few budgeting tips and tricks and ways we've learned to save and make the most of our money during our time here. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time landing here today, my name is Kathy. I'm a South African expat wife and mom, and I make videos all about life here in Perth. We've been here now for 6 months. I love sharing tips, tricks, hacks, and everything that we're learning along the way about settling into this new city. If you're a regular on my channel, welcome back. I'm so sorry the video is late this week. I got hit by a terrible flu along with my little girl, and it just didn't come together when it came to filming and editing, so I really apologize that the video is only being uploaded today, but I hope it comes in handy and it's a good one. We're going to be focusing on basically money tips and tricks and things that we've learned about budgeting and what you can expect from your finances once you've made this big move. So for those of you who know our story, my husband and I lived in Dubai for 5 years. So our first immigration was actually in 2016 when we left our home country, South Africa, and then moved to Dubai. And we definitely knew we wouldn't be in Dubai forever. You never get a citizenship in Dubai. So that's a huge priority as South African citizens. We would be looking for jobs in places like New Zealand or Canada or Australia, and we ended up in Australia, which we're very, very happy about. But we always knew that when we hit the ground running in our forever country, hopefully, that we'd want to have a very secure financial plan, budget, know how to save money from the get-go. Our experience in Dubai was slightly different, and although towards the end of our stay in Dubai we did save quite a bit of money, we didn't put those principles in place when we first arrived. There is a sort of honeymoon period when you arrive in a new country. There's so much to see and do, and Dubai especially, it was a real travel hub. So we spent quite a lot of money, especially our first probably 2 to 3 years traveling, and no regrets. It was such an enriching experience, and it was just my husband and I at that time. But once we started planning to have a family and getting a bit older, our priorities shifted and changed, and we realized as expats it's even more important to have a good budget in place and to be financially savvy. We needed to have our ducks in a row when it came to budgeting. So when it came to moving to Australia, we did a lot of research, a lot of planning, and I thought I'd share a few resources that we found helpful along the way, and also just what we found now that we're living here has paid off and is helping us save a bit of money and get the most value when it comes to spending our Aussie dollars. So let's get straight into today's video. Tip number 1 is going to be set up your budget for the first month that you're going to be in Australia. This is really hard to do because you have to usually do it before you actually get here. And it is tricky to know how much groceries are going to cost you or entertainment when you've got no real foot on the ground experience. So my advice would be just to research as much as possible. There are valuable websites out there like NUMBEO, which I will list down below in the description of this video, and you can follow the link. And it gives you a little bit of insight into costs of basic items in your new city. So I found this incredibly useful just to give us some estimates. You can also try and log on to local grocery store websites and make yourself a fake shopping list of some brands and items that you think you would need in your starter month. So keeping things simple, of course, but it will give you a bit of an estimate how much weekly groceries might cost you, and then get you set up a bit of a weekly budget. It's also useful to have a look at things like restaurants or coffee shops or fast food places that you might be eating from once you know where you're going to be staying your first month of arrival. Some companies might put you up in accommodation in a hotel or a serviced apartment, and you get that address quite soon. So you would be able to then look and see where you might be eating out and have a look at their menu and budget for yourselves. Alternatively, if you're going to be staying in an Airbnb and it's up to you to organize your accommodation, try and find somewhere that has a shopping center close by and something quite affordable like a Macca's, which is McDonald's, or something that's not too expensive. We have found that eating out in Australia can be quite pricey, so you want to be sure that you're getting the best value you can if you do rely heavily on takeout or fast food. Then definitely build in an unforeseen or contingency budget for yourselves. It's a new country. There are going to be times where you're caught off guard or have to make an emergency purchase. So just make sure you give yourself a little bit of breathing room and have some extra cash saved up that is for those certain emergencies that might arise or unforeseen circumstances. It takes a lot of pressure off, and it could be for anything, like perhaps someone gets ill and you have to suddenly go buy some medicine, or it could be someone at your new job has a birthday and you've been invited somewhere and you have to take a little gift. So just have that extra bit of cash and you know that you've got it when needed. Then the last part of point number 1 is going to be try and research what sort of home price you'd be looking at for your first rental, so that you're able to calculate roughly what you're going to need when it comes to putting down a deposit. You're going to need a lump sum set aside in a bank account that's easily accessible, and you know that you don't have to worry about trying to get money transferred if you still got money in your home country, or try and do as much research as you can and make sure that lump sum for rent and getting your first accommodation sorted is already transferred and waiting for you in Australia. It simplifies things so much. And if you've watched my video about how to secure your first rental, I will link it down below. You'll know that there is a housing shortage at the moment. So if you find your rental, the quicker you can pay that deposit and secure the property, the better for you and your family. Most of the property websites do give you estimates, so they might help you out by estimating deposits and things like that, but you could always reach out directly to the agent. We had to pay a month's deposit for our house, and we paid a month's rent up front. So you're looking at about 2 months in total, but some people also tend to pay rent for up to 6 months in advance, which helps them secure a property. So completely up to you and what your family would like to do, but yeah, you're going to need a substantial amount just to secure that home. So the second point, I'm going to be recommending a resource which we found incredibly useful, and that is the Barefoot Investor. If you haven't had a look at that book, it's really, really interesting, and he gives a lot of advice. He comes from a financial advice background. I'm definitely not going to try and quote things from his book. It's quite in depth. I really recommend you read it. We listened to it as a couple on Audible, and it basically gives you a really easy budget structure that works very well in Australia. So useful tips like what banks are going to give you 0 fees, so you don't have to pay bank charges and lose any unnecessary money. He lays out your savings structure and how to save towards buying your first home in Australia, which is a huge priority for our family. So yeah, he just gives really valuable advice, and it's very easy, it's very practical to follow. My husband and I have found it such a refreshing way to look at our budgets. So I strongly encourage you to give it a read and see if it's something that would work for you and your family. The whole goal as well is for you to live a debt-free life in Australia, and that's something that is so important, to keep your only debt sort of to your mortgage versus credit cards. And we have found that so liberating, and yeah, just can't sing enough praises about how the budget has helped us. For those of you who've watched my channel, you'll also know that I had to travel home because we suffered a loss in my family, and it was quite an unexpected trip home, and we were able to cover my air tickets because of the way we had been following this particular budget. We had the cash on hand, we didn't need to use a credit card, which was just the biggest blessing, because the last thing you want to be worrying about is financial stress at a time like that. So yeah, really strongly recommend checking out Barefoot Investor and see if it'll work for you and your family. From the get-go, the main thing, if you do decide not to go with the Barefoot Investor and you want to do your own budget, just to prioritize that saving is a big deal. And if you're not going to be dedicated to it, it's never going to happen. So we want to save money because we want to start a full-on life here. We want to put down roots here. We want to buy a home. So saving should be right at the top of your list. And then also you want to enjoy your new city. So you want to have a budget that is, yes, strict in that you are putting money away, but you also want to have a little bit of leeway so that you can enjoy the city. And further on in the video, I'll share some great activities as a new arrival that don't cost a lot of money, so you can still get out there and enjoy being in Australia. Right, money tip number 3 is going to be how you do your grocery shopping. So first and foremost, I started with online shopping and I found it incredibly helpful. It can be quite overwhelming walking into a supermarket and you don't know the brands at all. You don't know what are the more affordable brands. You're trying to do cost comparisons and then you buy the cheapest brand, which is really not great, so you don't enjoy it. And it's a huge headache. So I found online shopping allowed me to filter, it allowed me to sort items from lowest to highest cost and really be selective in my purchases. It also stopped me from overspending on items that were new and exciting to me. So where I would have walked down the aisle and seen something I really thought, oh, let's give it a try, and chucked it in the trolley. And at the end of the shop, you've got probably 50 items you didn't really need. I found online shopping curbed that a lot. So I'd recommend it, especially just while you're getting familiar with brands and how to shop and learning what your favorite items are in your household. Then I would also recommend, just to take the pressure off, especially the first few months, we have now joined a subscription for a meal box. We are using Every Plate, but there are a lot of options. There's a business called Marley Spoon and I think Dinnerly as well. So many varieties, and you can really just have a look and see what works for you. But basically the box arrives at your house. It's your week's worth of dinner meals, and you can select the number of people that you're feeding. We have selected a 2-people meal plan, but honestly, it feeds us and my little girl, so there's more than enough. The portions are really generous, and we've just found it simplifies that main meal of the day, so I'm not running around trying to think of what to cook. And it's also helped us budget because we know that we've got our meals for the week sorted out. We give 1 meal a week is dedicated to us going out somewhere or getting takeaways or having a little bit of a night off. But the other 6 meals of the week we know are catered for. And sometimes they're even leftovers, which my husband then takes to work with him for lunch. So it's a really affordable, easy, convenient. I'm all about convenience right now. Immigrated with a toddler in a new place. The easier the better, and it's also incredibly nutritious and healthy. The food has always got a great balance of protein, vegetables, carbs, and it tastes absolutely delish. So I'd recommend doing that for yourselves. It costs us about $80 for a week, and if you start comparing what you could go in store and buy protein wise, it definitely does save you. The only other thing I would say is a downsider is the additional packaging. So it does generate quite a lot of waste. Unfortunately, they package everything per portion, so you get your spices in a little sachet. And I think for that reason alone, it's not really sustainable for us to continue using it forever. But it has been exceptionally helpful in this early starting period and while we're adjusting to life in Perth. Then point number 4 is going to be about researching fun activities that don't break your piggy bank. So when you land in a new city, it is very tempting to go onto Google and see the top 10 things to do, and usually those recommendations are great, but they come with a price tag, and if you try and accomplish all of them in the first month you're here, you're going to be about $1,000 out of pocket at the very least. So I think it's really wise to make a list for yourself of things you do want to do and then plan out your couple of months, especially the first year, and set yourself little goals. So there are a lot of low cost and affordable activities that you can enjoy in Perth or Australia in general, I think, that are not going to break the bank, and then save 1 or 2 big ticket items to enjoy every couple of months versus every weekend if you are trying to save and be budget conscious. Things like visiting parks, the beaches, going on hikes, just enjoying the wonderful outdoors that Australia has to offer can save you a ton of cash. And we actually try and plan our month in advance, so we know every weekend exactly what we want to go out and do, and it just sort of diminishes the risk of us getting ourselves into a situation where we want to be spontaneous, and you don't really want to be spontaneous with your money over the weekend. So yeah, it helps us keep controlled, but still have something to look forward to each and every weekend. It takes us maybe 30 minutes on a Thursday evening to sit down and say, what do we want to do for this coming month? And it's something to look forward to. So I'd strongly recommend you put that plan in place. It also gives you something to look forward to as someone who's not yet in Australia, you're planning your move. Already start researching and putting those activities together so you've got things to do. Being out and about and exploring your new country and city also helps to keep homesickness at bay. So I'd say it's pretty imperative you do allow for some room in your budget to have some fun, to go out and explore, and just be wise about what you choose to do, and you don't have to stress about the financial part of it. So it's also overwhelming to find things to do in a new city. Join a lot of Facebook groups in your community. You can also follow the hashtag Perth Life. They've got tons of advice, or Urbanlist on Instagram. They also have a huge variety of accommodation places to go stay, or just restaurants to go eat at, or things to do around the city. So I will tag those accounts down below. So if you're a foodie like we are, then tip number 5 is for you. Basically, it can get really pricey if you Google the most expensive restaurants or the top restaurants to visit in Perth. There are some amazing restaurants, and I believe this foodie culture is all across Australia. So it can be tempting. But what I'd recommend you do as a new arrival, if you are being budget conscious, is try and get out there and explore the street food options or market food options. So visiting the Scarborough night markets or Fremantle markets, which we actually went to this past weekend, visiting some of the farmers markets as well around your community, you get to sample some of the best food out there, and it's not going to break the bank. So that could give you your little foodie fix, and then plan to visit a more expensive restaurant or something a little bit more upmarket, perhaps every 3 to 4 months, just so your budget doesn't get hit hard your first couple of weeks in Australia. So tip number 6 is Petrol Spy. I have spoken about this app before in my previous videos, but guys, seriously, this past weekend, it saved us, I think it was $25 just by filling up at the cheapest fuel provider. So I really recommend you download that app, and before you fill up with fuel, have a look and see where you're going to save some bucks. It's a huge deal. You can save $25 on your tank of fuel. That's easily a little meal out or a coffee out and about with your family over the weekend. So definitely worth checking out, and why spend any more on fuel than you need to? So tip number 7 is going to be thrifting, and Perth has actually got a great thrifting culture. People are very generous about donating their goods. There are a couple of thrift stores around the city. You can visit stores like Salvos or children's charity shops, and you also know that your money is going to a good cause. Alternatively, Marketplace, there's usually a ton of listings, so just before you rush out and buy something, pop onto Facebook, search your Marketplace, and you're probably going to come off with a much more affordable option. So we found thrifting has been incredibly useful, especially with this move and with a little baby or a toddler, because they're constantly needing new toys or things to do or clothes, and there's really, as far as I'm concerned, there's no point in going out and buying new things that might last for, a couple of weeks or months. Rather reuse it. So get your thrift on. I would love to go and do a vlog on some thrift stores, some of my favorites around the city, and I probably will look to doing that when my mom comes over, so we can do that together. She is coming to spend Christmas with us this year. We're so excited. But yeah, stay tuned for some thrifting tips around Perth. Please drop a comment down below if that's something that would interest you, and yeah, I'd be happy to make a vlog on that in the future. So another great money saving tip, guys, is joining your local library. The libraries here are just so awesome. I know that other first world countries probably have similar experiences, but for us coming from South Africa, our libraries are just in a bit of a state where here I find them such welcoming. They're like community centers usually, and they've got a wonderful variety of books. It's so wonderful to take your little one in, and they get to pick out the books that they would like to read over the 3 weeks odd that you're allowed to take the books out. So it saves you on having to go out and buy new books. And they also provide activities for young children at no charge, things like rhyme time for little babies, and then for older kiddies and toddlers, they offer coloring in and story time. So you're working on your children's literacy, and it's not costing you a thing. If you're a stay-at-home mom like I am, This was a lifesaver, especially in the winter months when the weather was quite gloomy and rainy. We were able to go to our library at least once a week, and Novi got her fix when it came to her reading and interacting with other kids and fun songs. So go and get your library card. Tip number 9 is pretty obvious, but it's all about planning. So I really recommend that you try and sit down and make a roadmap of your family's financial plan for the first year that you are in a new city in Australia. Things can turn out to be quite expensive. We have learned that, especially coming from countries like South Africa and Dubai, where I think cost of living was a lot lower, and you just need to learn to work around it. So by planning out, when you plan to take a holiday or when you plan to book accommodation for a long weekend, you usually will save, especially if you're buying flights. You want to be booking those tickets well in advance. If you want to plan things like your child's weekly activities, so perhaps you want to enroll your child in swimming for the summer months, then make sure you've planned for that and it's not a hidden cost that's going to pop up. So try sit down, be realistic, and plan your budget as best you can with the knowledge you have. And that way, your first year is going to be beneficial. You're still going to be able to save some money, hopefully, and you're not going to feel financial stress. It can really be financially stressful if you haven't set out and given yourself some clear guidelines and clear plans for your coming year. My final tip for today, tip number 10, if you are not on a PR visa, so we are here on a 482 medium-term visa, and one of the terms of our visa is that we have to have private medical aid for the duration of our stay on this type of visa. So it's expensive. Medical here is costing us around $204 every 2 weeks. So that can add up quite quickly, and if you do the calculation over a year, it's a lot of money. We've gone for a mid-type cover because we're all quite healthy, and that it suits our family's needs. But that does mean we do have co-payments for our doctor's visits. So I'd strongly recommend that if you don't follow sort of the Barefoot Investor's method of saving, perhaps you want to open yourself a little emergency fund account anyways, and just every pay cycle, put a small amount of money into that account for your possible doctor's co-payments, especially important for children because you could be at the doctor quite frequently with a little one, and I've been getting quite ill this year with her as well. I don't know what it is. We're on vitamins, but I think it's a lot to do with changing countries, and our immunity is just not used to these strains of colds and flu. So have a little bit of grace with yourself and just make provision for having some money, especially for medical needs during your first year while your bodies are adapting. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and that these tips come in useful. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications bell so you get notified every time I do upload a video. I'll catch you in the next one.